Hey everybody, Bill in Virginia. Welcome back. So I've had a few requests on making trees, and I'm going to use this video to run essentially a real-time length on making a tree. I just will not film the time that the glue is drying, but to show you how I take one from this stuff, the grapevine wire that I've been getting at Hobby Lobby. You can also get it on eBay. It's called different things, but you want to look for florist wire or wrapped florist wire and then kind of look at it, but you'll find something like this. So let's get started because I'm already 41 seconds into it. So I've got a tape measure just roughly laid out. I'm going to do a tree that's about 11 inches. So first snip, the 11-inch. Then I'm just going to unspool this and I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way up on the first piece, get it down, then I'm going to come out and I'm going to do about another half of that so that I've got essentially 3 pieces. Straighten them out. Doesn't have to be perfect, but the straighter you can get them in this step, the easier it is when you're going to the next piece here in a couple of minutes. So get that. There we go. And you just kind of finesse them to get them where you want it to be. So that's good enough. And then you want to try to use the thickest part down at the bottom of these. So like this is a part of a stem of a tree. And you can see how it's thinner up at the top, thicker down the bottom, and that's just the wrapping around the wire. So you want to get it reasonably straight, as much as you can. Okay, so there's the core of a tree. So let's bring it up this way. And you know, I've talked a lot that I like wood glue. Wood glue works really well. And of course, I probably should have cleaned this one up a little bit before I started it so I can get the glue out. There we go. Okay, now I've got it. So let's just put a little dab on here. You don't need much, you just need to kind of cover all 3 pieces. There we go. And this is much different than the videos of how I was gluing stuff together quite a while back. Then I just take one of the old bread wrapper ties here and go around it, and surprisingly this really does not stick to the glue even if you get some of it on it, and then a few twists, and then you can kind of straighten it out as you go. And then I come up to where the first overlaps the other 2, and we'll just put a glob in there. Doesn't make any difference if you get too much. You don't want to go too crazy with it, but you can spread it out with your fingers. And spin it around. And using the wood glue, you know, you can be flicking off wood glue boogers after a while. It really doesn't hurt a whole lot. And then when you get the 2 pieces, let's bring it up. Just kind of get it together here. Same thing, we'll wrap it up. Just make sure that glue is firm where you're putting it in. You can straighten out the trunk a little bit at this step and give it a little bit of shape. That's the nice thing with this stuff. Even after you glue it, the shape will set pretty well. I'm going to add a little bit more down at the bottom. Just make sure I got some going around. All right. I'm going to turn the camera off. We're going to let this dry anywhere from about an hour to 2 hours before we're ready for the next step. And what I'm going to do off camera is I'm going to make up a bunch more of these, just so that I'm making a batch, because I've got some places on the layout, not on the module that I just had the contest on, but other places where I've got a few that I need. So more to come. All right, back at the bench. These have dried for a little bit, so I'm going to put the tops on these. So first thing I do is I get a toothpick double-sided round really works well, and cut it roughly in half. So from this, I can get 2 toothpicks. Now at the same time as I'm doing this, I've got my little old soldering gun heating up over here. I've got my super glue ready, and again, I use this rapid fuse, not a product placement, but it's good stuff. Take my super glue, take the top of the tree, and just give it a little dab. Then I'm going to take heat shrink and put on the top of the tree. Just kind of spin it on and just go down a little ways. Then I'm going to take the toothpick, or one of them that I've cut, and put a little bit of super glue on it. You don't need a lot, but I always like to try to get a good drop, and it always is beneficial to put a paper towel or something under you. Then slide it in. You want to kind of keep it snug. Then I'm coming in with my soldering iron, which is ready, and I start on the tree side so that my heat shrink is grabbing. You don't want to inhale the fumes because that smoke is coming from super glue. So you want to kind of keep that down. And then once you get the bottom kind of done, then just kind of work your way up. I do not use a flame on this. You might be able to, but I don't think that's safe. I don't think you'd get good results. So you can see, nice and gentle. And there we go. I've got the top on the tree. Now what I'm going to do is I will let it sit longer and let the glue dry before I go to the next step. Now this one, I did put this little green tie on it just to show you that this is the one that I started with, and this is the one you're going to follow throughout the video. I've got some others down here that I'm making, and I will do those off camera, but this is going to be the one you're going to see throughout the entire process. So let's let the glue dry, and then we'll come back. All right, ready to move on to the next step. So the same tree, I will just take this off, and we'll mark it a little later. So it's been about an hour and a half. Glue should be dry enough so I can just take these off. You can see this carpenter's glue sets quick, so I can do this. And again, when I do these, I'm normally doing these in batches of anywhere from 10 to 20. So everything that you see me do here, it takes a little bit for one, but then when you do multiple, it doesn't really take that long. Next thing, carpenter's glue. And I'm just going to coat this really well, all the way up to the top. And normally I'll have a paper plate under this to kind of catch some of the drips, but I'm only doing the 4. So if I get a whole bunch of drips on the cardboard, I don't really care. It's not going to make a big difference. Come down, make sure I got everything pretty well covered. You don't need a lot. You want to get it where it sort of saturates, especially into the grooves in between the grapevine wire or rustic wire, depends upon what you get, so that the glue will pack in there as you roll it in the Woodland Scenics material. Okay. So I've got that, so I'm just using Woodland Scenics blended turf on this one. You can use any color you want, it doesn't make any difference. Then I set it down in the turf, and I will kind of cover it a little bit just with my hands on here to kind of get it going. And then it's rolling it, nice even roll. And a little bit more up here. A lot of the stuff that's on the top will get knocked off anyway as it dries, and you don't really care. So there's our tree. Now I'm just going to set it aside, let it dry for a good day, and then we can go on to the next step. Short and sweet. So I will do these others, and then we'll come back and go on to the next thing. So the next step that I do while I'm waiting for the trunks to dry is I'll prep the material for the trees, the branches themselves. So I've got this green furnace filter. I get mine at Home Depot. Comes in a like 2x4 foot piece, and you do a lot with it. So I cut them up into squares, 2.5, 3, 3x3, 2x2s, down to like 1x1. And the key to this is you try to get 4 different pieces out of each of these squares. And that takes a little finesse and it takes a little practice. So I'm going to just show one. I'm just going to show tearing this one apart, and then I'll go and I'll get the rest of them done because, again, I'm doing multiple trees. But then I will also come back and show you the next step for the trim. So pick a corner and then start to work your way around. You want to try to get it as big as you can and as thin as you can. So there's a good piece, and you can see it's fairly thin. So let's go and get some others off of these. Sometimes you're going to get some that are the size of the square that you're working. Other times you're going to get not so much. And you're going to get sometimes stuff that you can't use at all. That's okay. You can use them for other things, or you can cut them down, like this piece. This is kind of shredded, but I'm going to be able to use this piece and this for like the tops of a tree. So let's just do this, see if I can get it shredded down. So when you're doing big batches of trees, this might take a couple of hours if you're doing a whole lot of trees. But you can see I've got it down and this part is done. So next thing that I do is I do just a rough shape. You can see this one's kind of straggly on edge, so I just take my scissors, I leave some of the straggles, and I just sort of round it over. So you can see a little bit different shape. Then I'm going to cut in with my scissors, and I'm just going to notch. This is the first of the, sort of the haircut step that I do later. This gives me a rough shape. I can kind of get it to how I want it to look. I can open up the branches a little bit, get rid of some of the excess. Normally when I'm doing this, I have a shopping bag that I just cut the material into because I'm going to use it later. But you can see I've got a nice little piece right here that will be a piece of tree. So I'm going to do the rest of these, and then I'll come back and show you what I've got. Again, this varies on the amount of time based upon the amount of material that you're going to do. I'm going to continue to do just the one tree and then build the others off camera. So, I'll get the rest of this done. This will be more than enough to take care of the one tree. So back here in a bit. So just a short time later, I have enough materials cut to shape and to size that I know I can do our tree there and probably one other one, maybe 2. But I made the other ones kind of on the big side for height. So let that dry thoroughly tomorrow, and then we can go and put these on. And this part, putting them on, actually doesn't take very long. And then we'll be ready for the next step after that. So here's our tree. Glue is set pretty good. Doing this next step, there is going to be some of the material that's going to come off. You can keep that. I just keep using it over and toss it back in the can so that I can put it on. But what I'll do is I'll take my biggest piece and kind of look at it, because there's always a side that is more flat. That's the bottom side. You want the kind of puffy to make it look like branches on the top, and then just find a good spot to start it. This is where the toothpick really helps. Then I'll put my fingers on either side, use my thumb and finger to kind of hold it, and literally spin the tree trunk to get it into position. You can leave them up high if you want. My particular forests, I tend to go down a little ways, and these will get hung up on occasion, so especially like on a knot, and you can kind of work it past. There we go, get down to where I tend to like to have them, a few inches off the bottom. Super glue. Kind of a copious amount of super glue, not like a little spot, but just kind of go at the base where the material touches the tree trunk, and literally a bead all the way around. One, it'll soak in to the tree trunk. Two, it will actually soak in to the furnace filter material, since that is a natural fiber. It just kind of helps it stick. And then go on to what you feel is the next biggest piece. Same thing, you work it down. Excuse me. Get the spacing that you like. I tend to go 3/4 of an inch generally. You know, if it's smaller scale, you tend to go a little bit smaller. And again, liberally apply the super glue. Since my bottle's getting low, I'll leave it down so I can actually get it to the tip better. Sometimes I'll wiggle a little bit just to make sure I get good coverage with the material, and then go on to the next. You'll see where it's pulling off material at the top. Excuse me, don't care. It's going to be covered up by this stuff, and once it's painted, you won't see it. You know, sometimes it'll stay. I find with the wood glue, it tends to peel off a little bit more than if I'm using Gorilla Glue. So Gorilla Glue is always a good choice. If you get stuff that's kind of, you know, the odd shape, that's fine. Try to find what you feel would have been the center of it. Some of it's just where material peels off naturally. It gives your trees, each one, a unique appearance. You know, you're not making them all look the same. You want them to look like they would in nature, you know, kind of wild looking. As you go up farther, you know, you kind of start to get different sizes. When you do the haircut a little later, you'll kind of get more of the scruff cut off, make it look more, I wouldn't call it uniform, but just a little bit more consistent. And if it's wet and if it's a loose fit, just give it a minute, because it will soak in and you will have a nice tight fit after a while on this. And once the super glue dries, it will dry hard, so you're not going to have your tree material peeling off. It's going to be where you put it, which is always nice. You can see I'm not being too careful. The only thing I'm trying to do is to make sure that the branches look like they're sort of level and even as you're going across. And if you get something that doesn't look right, you just take it off, save it for later, because that's a little bit on the big side, so we'll go with a little bit smaller here. We'll put this one on. Those paying attention, notice there was a quick gap in the video. I had an interruption, so I stopped a little bit here. Getting up near the top. Now we'll kind of go to the finer stuff. You can see already it's going to cover those places where you can see the black. And I come back in after I paint it and after I put on my base flocking material. It will get rid of those long stragglers that are out there. You can see we're getting near the top, so it won't be too much longer. Each piece does get its own glue. I don't like to go in and not put glue in. Near to the pinnacle. So this is where I use some of the like real small scrap pieces that I've had, and I'll kind of fold them, bend them a little bit, put them on the top. Try to figure out what's the best way so it looks decent, knowing that most of it's going to be covered up with material once you put the ground cover on it and your static grass. There we go. So the tree is built. It is looking decent. Glue is already setting. I'll set this aside for a little while, trim up just a little bit of those stragglers that are already here. And then once the glue dries a little bit, we'll take it outside, we'll spray paint it. And then the rest of it will go even faster. All right, got these trees ready for the painting. And this one with this little hole right here marks the tree that we are following along in this video. I'm using a charcoal gray primer and paint, and it seems to work pretty well. So just paint them up. Again, to do one takes less time than to do two, and I will come back and put a different coat of brown on these to finish them up, give them some highlights. And I can do anywhere from, you know, like what I got on here, 4 up to about 13, 14 at a shot. See how the trunks take the color nicely. And we'll just keep rotating it around. This can is just about out. I think I can get at least the coat I want on it. There we go. All right, that's it for this one. I'm gonna go get a different can. All right, so this next piece, I'm gonna spray on a little bit of espresso, give it more of a brown look, and we'll go from there. So again, highlights. Most of this is gonna be covered. You don't need to do too much. Right here is our tree. Rotate it around. And we'll pick them up and I'll get the underside as well. Kind of get rid of the dark green. Tree is done. Okay, next step is putting the first coat of ground cover on the trees. Again, I use this Suave Max Hold hairspray. You know, when you're using like fine turf, it'll adhere and really stick well. The same thing with static grass. You know, if you get coarser foliage, I don't know that this would work as well, and just maybe a spray adhesive might work better. But for doing it this way with these trees, this works fine. And here is our tree that we've been doing. So what I do is I give it a good soak with hairspray, mostly from top down. However, I will do a little bit other areas, and make sure you're doing it over something, because otherwise your floor is going to get coated. And I've got some pretty interesting staining on my garage floor, which eventually I can get off. But you know, good coats of good squirts of this hairspray. Then I'm just going to sift it right from the bottle. And this, I try not to put much on. This is just very light. You know, you don't necessarily need to soak the tree armatures, you know, branches in this stuff. The static grass will do that. You know, you want to get a good basic coverage on it. Got that, and then I just do a little bit underneath as well, just to kind of cover it, seal it, hide some of the lower branches. That's it. This part of it is done. Next part, we'll let this sit for just a little while, and then we'll come back in and give it a haircut. I'm going to go off camera, and I'll finish the other 4 trees real quick. It is haircut time. Let it sit for about 10 minutes. The hairspray glue is pretty dry. You know, I can tap it and there's not much coming off. So get out my florist shears and let's go in. So every place where it's kind of solid, we're gonna cut. And you're not gonna make a mistake on this. Even if you chop a whole chunk off, if you go out in nature, you look at trees, they don't look like what you get in models. Those nice, perfect shapes that just doesn't happen in the real world. So you see, I'm just not being super aggressive, but I'm definitely taking material off this. Go around areas where it's thick, I'll chop it more. See the stuff coming off. This is probably the funnest part of doing the trees. Also, it'll make your hand tired, you know, because you're cutting a lot of material here on each tree. Kind of get into some of the shapes that you want. You can already see how this is looking more like a tree with branches on it than it was just a little bit ago. So I am happy with that. You can see the cuttings that came off that one tree. All of these I will save and we can use those for underbrush. So I'll turn the camera off and I'll get the other three done. All right, last step before a tree is layout ready. Got my hairspray. I'm ready to put static grass on. So I'm using 2mm static grass, static applicator, and I'll show you what I do. So just like before, I want to soak it down, make sure it's got good coverage, and I will turn the static applicator on just so I'm generating a static field, but not actually touching the tree. Don't need to. And then I'm just going to work it across. Like with the other material, you do not need to soak it with static grass. If you're putting it into like a forest, a small amount is best. Then with this, I'll come back in, give everything another coat, and just kind of straight down and around. The static applicator will make some of the grasses stick up. So there it is, and there we go. Our tree is layout ready. So this one's done. I will do the others real quick, and last shot we'll show this where I think I'm going to put it on the layout. So here's the tree that we built in this video. I had planned on putting a tree here and maybe another one in this area and maybe one more along the cliff over here. So probably at least 2 more of the trees that I build are going to go on this scene, and then that will do it for trees over here. But if you've been watching the time, I think to build this one tree clocked in about 28 minutes. Now, if I was not doing talking in different parts of it, narrating as I went, it probably would have taken about 25 minutes. So that's for one tree. And if you're doing a batch, yes, it takes time to build more than one tree, but it doesn't add that much time to each of the steps. You know, you're going to only cut materials once. You're only going to give haircuts once. You do it in batches. Yeah, it's going to take a little while, but you're going to have a scratch-built tree that you're going to be happy to see on your own layout. So I've got to find a home for those others, and I'll get them on the layout here. But you know what? That's it for this. So hopefully you find it useful and you make your own trees. So with that, keep having fun on your layouts. Until next time. Last clip. So there's the tree that we did in the video, and then I've got the 3 others in here. And that will take care of all of the trees for the layout, I think. So that gets me up to a grand total for everything of 448 trees. I do like making trees.